That's right.
Should we read in slow motion?
Yeah, no, we'll see. I think if you can catch the sound, you can see the good question. Hello, hail and welcome to the February 2014 Tolkien Society meeting here live at the Rocket Bakery on Hastings, North Spokane. Hawk is not able to be here, but we're joined by Richard and Chris and our online friends. We hope that you guys are able to join us as well. My apologies in advance for the poor graphics. I'm using my little notebook device as Hawk and his technical prowess are not available. So we will miss him, but we enjoy being able to dive into this month's meeting and all the things that involves. So anyway, notes. Indeed.
You want me to read these?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Let me explain. No, it is too long.
Let me sum up. Okay, so we have the notes from January's meeting that Richard has graciously been volunteered to read.
January 14th, Tolkien Society meeting notes. The Tolkien Society at Rocket Bakery from attending Hawk, Brian, Alice, Chris, Richard, and whoever else is online. Hawk's tech rant, dealing with Google Plus issues and general comments about today's about yesterday's, last month's live broadcast. Google minus. Google minus. Brian read the December meeting notes. Hawk recommends the book William Shakespeare's Star Wars by Docher, which he got as a Christmas present. Discussion. Item from December, Japanese Desolation in a song movie states incorrectly by Gandalf that the Witch King of Agnar was recently brought back from death as a ringmate by the necromancer of Dol Guldur. I said that the people of the Middle Earth refer to the ring wraiths appearing in the second page, 1144. Tolkien Gateway cites the Silmarillion and intended to be the Lord of the Rings, and describing the Nazgul leader as a ring in second page.
Very squashed.
Grab a chair. Yeah, we've got negative this time.
It's the miniaturized version of our usual.
Yeah. Peter Jackson clearly wants to give a reason for the alias Zora, Necromancer by having great undead warriors, whereas the old definition of Necromancer is the same as the modern one.
Discussing today?
We'll read the notes from January.
Yeah, we're actually broadcasting.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Or at least we think we are. Could be talking to myself. What did Tolkien mean by this name? And this question explored at our February meeting. I read Tolkien's letter 73. We discussed Tolkien's line about escapism, reference to D-Day having occurred. Chris read letter 74. Comments and discussion included Raynor Unwin, Christopher, and Michael Tolkien in the war. Michael suffering possibly from PTSD. Alice read letter 75. Noted his Tolkien's love for birds and living things and disdain for machines, although he did appreciate it. He spent some time discussing the Finnish saga, something that I'm not going to pronounce very well, Kalevala, especially Rune of 20.
Which I looked up, but we can talk about later.
We're supposed to explore that at this meeting and dedicate a large amount of time to things Finnish as mentioned to Tolkien.
War here.
Do you think we're going to finish?
Oh.
Finnish?
Horrible.
I don't know, we don't have any Finnish. I don't speak any Finnish. So. War brings out a deeper appreciation of the beauty of nature by its sharp contrast. Perhaps this explains Tolkien's comments about the outdoors and his sent to his own customers. We finished up a comment from Artemir, one of our online friends, on the pronunciation of Kalevala.
Last month,
Apparently it's all short vowels, emphasis on the first syllable. We concluded some administrative and looking break 2014 in the EA Tolkien Society and submitted by Brian.
Grand Dictator, or everyone's known as Secretary. So, yeah.
Well,
So there's the notes.
Made me speak like a puppet.
It's all meant to be good fun. So anyway, so there's the notes. Does anybody have any comments about that? About last month's notes before we kind of follow up with? I think we had 2 issues to follow up on.
Actually, yeah, I do have something. Going back to Jackson's decision to break the Hobbit up into 2 parts.
Right.
I recently saw another movie that was based on a novel, in particular by Orson Scott Card.
Oh,
Endgame.
right.
And he was part of the production team, so he wasn't letting them mess with the story all that much. So he crammed everything that was in the book into a single movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought home to me that you can do that, and it'll ruin the movie because you're trying to deal with too much.
Right.
So you know, while the movie format is not a book, so it does need some reworking. And comparing and contrasting the 2 movies, which I've only really seen trailers for the other,
Right.
in the first one. But just going through the Ender's Game, seeing the flaws of trying to do that, basically doing a direct translation of the novel and the movie is just will destroy the movie narrative.
So you were disappointed then?
Well, yes and no. It wasn't. Everything felt rushed,
Right.
Because everything was crammed into a format that wasn't really designed for it.
Right.
So everything. Well, it wasn't intense. It was just, we cover this, we cover this, we cover this, we cover this, we cover this.
Have you guys seen or read?
Orson Scott Card has a very extensive meta-narrative
Yeah.
that I don't think can be captured on film appropriately, or it would ruin the film. Conversely, meaning that there's a lot of growth in their strategy as he goes through a series of games that was cut short in the movie.
Everything was cut short. Everything was in the book, but it was in short little sections.
Right.
Nothing was dealt with in any
So
detail.
if we're talking plot, that might work, but when we're talking about character development, you really can't
Yeah, they didn't really have
do
to
that. It's like time-lapse photography. You can see how it changes, but it's not going to give you an idea of a natural growth cycle. Right.
It needs to just explain what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the dialogue in Orson Scott Card's case is all in the head. It's all strategy.
Right.
Meta-narrative.
Yeah.
It's not dialogue between individuals.
Right.
Which can be portrayed on a movie, whereas all this meta-narrative stuff, it's harder to do.
Gotcha. So that's questions for our online viewers too. I see you tune in. Have any of you seen Ender's Game? Have you read any Orson Scott Card's books or other sci-fi where you would say, comparing the books to the movies, how did it measure up? Also, just wanted to apologize. We're not able to do what we normally do, which is to be able to monitor our Facebook page and the URC for OneRing.net. So we may not be able to follow up on questions. We might have to do that later on somehow after the meeting. But so please hope that some things that we talk about today will be interesting to you. Thanks, Richard, for bringing that up.
We should probably introduce the mystery.
Right. Well, Jacob was here in our epic December meeting in which we hashed out and talked over actually the Desolation of Snog and the second Smaug. Okay.
Smaug.
Smoog. The Desolation of the Dragon, the second Hobbit movie in Hugh Jackson's second trilogy. Anyway,
producers have to do everything in trilogy.
Right. Well, so we can do next. I'm not sure. Anyway, but Jacob, since that time, have you seen the movie? Because at that
Yes,
time
I
you
have.
hadn't. And after our meeting, then going and seeing the movie, anything
Well-
extra to add to kind of your thoughts on the movie versus say the book, or
After having the conversation with us, some relevant experts to the entire council,
I did.
I had to step back from the expectations of the book and just realize and let it go.
Yeah.
And that I don't. If you were trying to be so true to it,
Yeah.
there's a lot of aspects of it that I could just tear apart the entire time. But at the point, I had to turn it off and just not the movie, but turn off that tearing it apart, and comparing it to the book and this and that, and just go and realize that he was developing a story. And where he's going with this story is he's leading the Hobbit story into
The Lord
Lord of the
Rings.
Rings. And then the book does not do really anything other than just the introduction of the ring.
That's true.
all it does, an introduction to the ancient character.
Lots
Maybe
of
not
loose
ancient,
ends.
lots of loose ends.
Just hints, little things like Glamdring, I think was, the sword or whatever, the trolls thing. It actually mentions that it was just forged in, by elves in
High elves, yeah.
high elves in Gondola or whatever. I mean, just like no context, no real connection.
But I appreciate that in the movie series, in the movie itself, Gandalf goes to that, I don't know the name of that, where orcs are hiding. Radagast goes and finds the person.
Goldguldur?
Yeah. Where he goes there and actually has a very epic magic battle.
Yeah.
I mean, you never see him throw magic, even talk about throwing magic like that in any of the books.
Mm-hmm. You like that?
I didn't.
Right.
Because it gave it.
Well, I think Peter Jackson is taking some of his definite character archetypes from D&D instead of from source material.
Or sorcery material.
Well,
From what I understand from
he's taken the necromancer with modern definition. He's taking a wizard as he's basically recasting the animal as a human who throws spells.
Yeah. I think that he's still being more than just a regular human.
I think it's more of a case he doesn't really understand the material. It's deeply
Well,
that's a personal thing.
I guess
some water for her.
I guess so, but I enjoyed the different parts that were side stories.
Right.
Like, why did Gandalf leave the forest? Why did he go on his own thing? What did he do? This is what he did.
Right.
These are the things that brought.
Right.
I enjoyed it. It was
Well,
more circular as far as the
obviously, he
lineage.
left the forest because the coffee harvests were better than cities.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
But I liked that there was a circle. The story was starting to come into circle. And
That's a
curious.
good point, Jacob.
I'm curious to see how much the next one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it'll be a conclusion, but I'm really curious because there's supposed to be some great war battle or something like that supposed to be going on, which never took place in the Hobbit
No, there
themselves.
was the Battle of Five Armies.
Yeah, but they
Right.
really wasn't.
But
It wasn't really much of an army.
Even that.
It was really. It was Bilbo talking
from Bilbo's perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he missed most of the battle.
About he was discussing.
He hit in the head.
Oh yeah, that too.
So he missed basically the whole part.
But
So this is kind of seen from a third-person kind of point of view, where you're kind of able to hover over Dol Guldur, and you're able to hover over here and see it. Whereas in the Hobbits, you're following on the way.
And, I mean, there was really just the elves. And so I think who showed up at the very end book, who showed up to fight to try to take it was some of the elves and some of the other
It was
dwarves.
the forest, the elves from Mirkwood.
Sure.
The Mirkwood elves.
Yeah, because you had basically the humans from Laketown, the White Bard.
Yeah.
You had the the elves from Mirkwood. And then, of course, the dwarves' cousins came down Iron Mountains as opposed to dwarves led by
It was
Dane.
basically a local powers.
So 3 armies, but then the 2 armies, the orcs, and then the wargs, or there's some debate.
The Hawks.
Well, that's what we
The
thought, the
Eagles.
Eagles, but no, actually, that's what makes sense to me when you look back and read those sections again. It refers to the wargs are actually, as depicted in The Hobbit, more like demonic wolves.
Yeah.
That actually are sentient, they're intelligent, and they make a pact with the orcs on their side.
I was a little disappointed. I thought at the end of the first segment of The Hobbit and going to the middle one that they would talk with the eagles.
Right.
I mean, they show the cliff, and that's a huge part in the book. It's a lot of dialogue.
It's a departure that I hope maybe would be included in the extended.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. I did like that they had the bear. What's his face?
Oh, I hear the Windlord.
Bjorn. Yes. I know.
That.
But I didn't think that they.
Amazing.
I didn't think that when my mentor reading through that part, I didn't picture him as that being quite looking kind of like a troll, you know. I got that he was a shapeshifter, but I always pictured him a little bit more similar to Tom Bombadil. You know, I always similar him as something of grand person, you know, opposed to this kind of humanoidish troll
Fairy guy.
Yeah, I didn't picture him as that.
Well, I think they're trying to show that he was he comes from a race that is
down,
humanoid but hunted down. Yeah, that was.
But they never discussed any of that.
Right.
Or why he hated orcs so much.
Right.
There was no talk of that. I don't know where that came from.
It's. I believe it's in the Unfinished Tales.
Is it? Okay.
It's hard to mention that in the movie.
I pictures.
Yeah.
But
It works more. Good points, guys. 2 points we have to also follow up on from the notes. One was something that Richard alluded to, and that was the necromancer. So the question was raised. Do you want to read that one little part?
6, right? Peter Jackson wants to give a reason for the alias of Storm Necromancer by having him invade undead warriors. He's following the cold definition of necromancer. That's what he's doing, in my opinion.
So that was the question which was raised, is when Jackson uses, says, okay, well, here we've got necromancer Golgolder, which is obviously Sauron.
Yeah.
His plot device is that
Is that the same as the modern one? What did Tolkien mean by that?
Right, because what he does in the movies, he has them raised from the dead, create the undead warriors. He creates the race.
Yeah.
Soon before, not long before the events of the movie, that Sauron had in the last few years brought back from the dead. These the Nazgul, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know if it was you or one of you had mentioned, well, is that what necromancers always meant?
Yes, and I went and looked, and
what did you find?
Well, I found a book, what do you call it? A look at the middle-age word necromancy, which is a little different.
Okay.
Certainly necromancer comes from that word.
Right.
There's an entire book that happens to be at the University of Washington Library that I could get.
Really?
Or have delivered to the Spokane Downtown Library.
Sounds interesting, although somewhat creepy.
And it is a scholarly look at the middle-aged word.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool.
I went and looked online, and there's a wiki entry for necromancer.
Under which wiki? Is it the Tolkien Gateway one, or
no? The
Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Okay. Any insight there? Or?
Well, yeah. In that case, they're talking. They're going into necromancer was more of what we consider a kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Now this is really interesting because it goes back to the whole idea that words change over time. And that are lots of Tolkien, wouldn't it? Because he was all about words and language.
Where do we find words and language?
Yeah.
And history words, but
in the Oxford
OED
English Dictionary, which Tolkien actually helped to write some of the entries in W.
Do you use that in your students?
No. But I've got two of them, so, now this is
blind.
I have a magnifying glass.
From reading that
Actually, yeah,
5-point font.
Chris.
That particular dictionary comes with magnifying
Yeah.
glass built into the case.
Yeah, it is. But I didn't bring along today because.
I can read.
Thanks. No, I
No, I can
actually,
take off my glasses and
well,
see it quite clearly.
I just want to read this one short little bit, and then I'll
Okay.
pass it on to you. So this is what I looked up, and I think it goes back to maybe most people nowadays would say, oh yeah, necromancer. Necro is not something to do with dead,
Yeah.
and okay, this dude makes zombies, or this dude makes whatever, So this is kind of going back to what both Richard and Chris mentioned. And this is from like 1912. I mean, this isn't like maybe 1950. It's not like the online dictionary. They update all the time. So
Actually, that's probably more relevant to Tolkien's frame of mind.
because you don't want to follow just modern fad.
Well, the thing is, I think our definition, the cultural definition for this generation,
Mm-hmm.
is from video games. And video games that define
Right.
necromancer or somebody
Sure.
raised the dead.
Sure. Yeah, I think all those categories, sorcerer, whatever.
In particular, I'm thinking of Diablo 2.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Here's what necromancer itself says. It says that it comes from the Old French practices necromancy, one who claims to carry on communication with the dead, more generally a wizard, magician, wonder worker, or conjurer. So when Tolkien referred to Sauron at Dark Lord as the necromancer, this mysterious guy who's working undercover, it's not specifically someone who raises dead people back to life or whatever for his own ends, but who communicates with the dead. In other words, evil spirits. I mean, I think that's the connotation. There is a shift in meaning. I don't think most people nowadays, if you said, well, okay, what would a necromancer be able to do? They're thinking action, not necessarily communication. But I think communication is at the heart of Tolkien's world. And even you look at like the Palantir, those seeing stones, they're
More
for
like
communication.
more like a source of information
Mm-hmm.
in the old days.
Right. We got to remember too that all of Tolkien's Middle Earth was basically created after he had the languages. Or he started by inventing the languages, and then he invented the world where the languages live in, which is totally opposite to most of the fantasy. It's just you create a world, and then you populate it with races, and then you races languages.
Yeah.
But it's the other way around for him. It's just that the guy.
Before that, they're
And
just
then
guys
you-
wearing labels can, beating rocks and painting them.
Okay. Well, nobody's done the Lord of the Rings yet in Morse code that we know of, but Richard did find the Latin copy. Right.
Or not.
Yes. The original came out, right?
The original.
Yes. So that was the one thing we did follow up on,
Nobody
which
can
was
play actually.
a whole thing that Tolkien probably meant something a little different, and I think Jackson probably was taking some liberties there. But again, he's trying to stitch things together as a team. So you can
Trying to tie it
honor him
together.
for that. He's just doing it in his own 21st century way, which is what anybody probably would, a few people would actually be able to capture. And it's very hard to do. So
I think that if you were trying to popularize Tolkien's work, you couldn't do it in another fashion at this time of day,
You're
this time
right.
of year, because
So,
it just didn't work. I mean, it's a handful of people who pick up and pass the generation, continue with Tolkien work, But
which is why we are here, and people like us.
The mythos is taken on a life of its own.
Okay, let's.
Which is why
Thank you. Segue, please.
Spokane Public Library holds books like the Kalevala to
So
create
this is
lore.
So this is a plug for not only did Tolkien in writing great books, we also think libraries are a good thing because there's resources out there, or the internet, which is basically a virtual library, ways for people to be able to get a hold of it. You have so much information, and yet we're actually fairly starved when it comes to this because either maybe some people might not have time, other people might not have the ability or access or whatever it might be. But this is kind of an old copy. Let's segue into the Kalevala, as they
This
say in
comes
Finnish.
from the library,
Okay, so Chris,
published in London, and the Everyman Library is a library that every man should have.
exactly. So like this is the most important works of the history, maybe like like really important stories, sagas like the Norse Eddas, if you've heard of those, or in our own American background, we would probably say something like, maybe not quite so old, but we think of maybe stories like Robin Hood, King Arthur. There's stories that people keep talking about even though they're hundreds of years old. So the second tie into the notes was, so there's this huge shadow that Finnish stories or language and stories kind of casts on Tolkien when he was young, which apparently influenced his writing. So
didn't he study that as part of his career?
Yeah, he did. Apparently, he taught himself to read Finnish just in order to read this book because it was translated into English. Yeah.
And apparently Finnish is a rather new language. So this poem here has been transcribed, adulterated.
Like an old Finnish kind of thing.
There are some scripts that have been printed in the 17th and 18th centuries and remained predominantly oral until 1835, when a substantial portion published in the hand of Elias Knox.
This guy rocks.
Then he expanded 1849, which is 15 years later, to the present length of 22,795 lines in 2 volumes. This book contains both of them. In 500 pages.
Which English is that?
British English, of course.
Middle English, Old English.
It is most modern.
King James, or is it?
No, it's more modern.
Early 20th century?
Well, this says 18.
The English copy?
This is translated by W.F. Kirby. Published in 1977. First published in 2 volumes in 1907. And so, yeah, this is pretty much original
so it's
English translation of it.
Really? Okay, so there was an English translation available to Tolkien apparently.
Yeah.
But he wanted to read it in the original Finnish.
Because, the translator takes liberties with that's translating.
Right.
Well, because he's translating it one way doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way the author intended.
Right.
And the hardest thing to translate is verse, and this is all verse.
Yes. And so the reason why we're focusing on this is because in our last meeting, in Tolkien, Letters to Tolkien, number 7, he mentions one chapter or runo, which is chapter 20 of the Kalaba. Did I say it right, Artemir? And the whole chapter is on the making of beer and the legendary and mythical origin for beer, which runs to, I counted, I did my on my Word document when I checked this, 3,500 words in English. 3,500 words, and so they believed in serious time.
Yeah, this 535 line poem.
They did
Wow.
computers back then. They didn't have rock concerts. They didn't have television.
And even more
All the
amazingly,
things that turn our minds into.
exactly. Plus, being an originally an oral society that may not have had things written down, you're basically passing this on, slightly altered perhaps.
Yeah, the ballads were
You're
history
orally.
transmission.
We're talking equal amounts that these guys are memorizing and then saying. And I've not seen this, but there's a National Geographic documentary on one of the last Finnish rune singers, and we'll link this up onto the in the comments section of the when this goes to the YouTube video for our broadcast. But you can find it if you look up National Geographic Tolkien Finnish, and it brings up this article about Lord of the Rings. This was originally actually written back at the time when Return of the King came out, so that's 2001, a long time ago. but it talks about an area of Finland called Karelia, which is where the Old Finnish was still spoken, or where people still recognize the Kalevala. So did you have any insights from reading the Kalevala to share with us, Chris? Anything that you thought, yeah, that seems like an influence on Tolkien?
Well, Tolkien said that he read it again, and that he didn't like it the second time. And I certainly can understand. It appears that the way that it's written is sometimes a little repetitive, and the comments say, well, maybe that's because they forgot a line and they had to insert something to make the verse work or something like that.
Or it could have been a couple different versions.
But Tolkien certainly draws on certain things, like riding eagles is mentioned in here.
Seriously?
Yes.
That is an interesting image, and I can see why it would latch on that.
Strange little side note here. I've been to the pub in Oxford where Tolkien and Lewis would meet together, and it's called the Eagle and Child. They nicknamed it the Bird and Baby. But the t-shirt I got, and I know it's kind of what an American thing to do. Got the t-shirt, then they're done that. But they did shirts, so they weren't ashamed of making a buck, tourists.
Yeah.
But in a picture of a child riding on the back of an eagle, which is like, strange.
But for all you history buffs here, the forging of the Sampo. Well, what does Sampo mean?
Yeah, tell us about the Sampo. What is the Sampo?
The Sampo is this gold idol, lack of a better word, that when built produces an endless supply of gold, an endless supply of grain, and an endless supply of salt.
It's like a mill?
No, it's a magical device that provides the basic reason for life.
Right. Like gold.
Right.
For some people.
And so there's this story in here about how evil witch, for lack of a better term, goes and kidnaps the character's sister.
Okay.
And to get his sister back, he has to make this Sampo for the
Oh.
witch. And
Now, isn't there an old wizard named like Vanamoinen or something?
yes. So that's part of it.
I mean, that sounds like a Gandalf character too.
But the entire story has actually been made into a movie in the
What?
50s.
No
And
way.
if you want to watch it, it is available on YouTube under one of the episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which I watched the entire movie.
Oh,
How long is
And
it?
it was great.
They
It was
must have
about
had some
90
things
minutes.
to say.
Really?
They must have had some things
Yes,
to say.
they
This
did.
is black and white, right?
It's beige-ish color. It's,
Okay.
It's
Have
mid
you ever,
50s.
have you ever seen this? Together?
No, I've heard of it.
Okay,
though.
what it is they show a movie,
Uh-huh.
but then they have a cutout that they put in between the movie and their camera. And they have these robots who sit and watch it, and they make commentary.
You're
of everything.
joking.
No,
No.
it's
Seriously?
hilarious.
It's great.
Some of it.
One
Some of it.
instance, for one example,
Doctor Who. Dumb bad.
for one example, they were doing this 50s movie, and this overweight biker steps in, and one robot turns to the other. My chair's really large. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do that kind of stuff.
Oh man. Okay, so
But
You watch this.
Yeah.
Kalevala.
You can watch parts of it. The parts of the lore are
Law and law.
available. Yeah. Right.
Wow. Okay, so tell us. So there's riding of eagles. There's a magic object that can give you power. Now, do they have to destroy it? Is that a quest?
There's
To
the
destroy the
invention
Sampo?
of beer. There's the origin of iron. And there's all sorts of things.
But what about this
Sounds like a
device?
basic Minecraft.
Well, once he and his best
Yeah.
the shiny knight in armor, white hair, flowing hair,
White?
blonde white,
So that
Nora. Yes. Yeah, they go and get then when they go destroy the Sampo. They go to Sampo, and then they come back, and the widow steals the sun away, which is up there. The Arctic is above the Arctic Circle, so the sun actually goes below the horizon months.
Yeah.
3 months,
And
depending on how deep.
and then they go and make music at the witch using their magical instruments, and all of the witch's henchmen fall asleep. And they go rescue the sun back. This is all just one.
Wow.
So,
Nobody's ever said before.
yeah, but it's stories around how the world came to be. I can't Rudyard Kipling's Just So Stories and some.
Well, many of the
It's just
mythologies,
hard to read.
Many of the mythologies that are sprinkled by history arise because some small child said, Papa, why does the sun go away for 3 months?
And then make a story and then it continues to
This
go.
witch steals the sun to the cave for a couple months, and then we go and fight her until we rescue the sun back.
Right.
Yeah.
And it, and that goes back to Tolkien's view of myth, which I feel like, and I'm not saying this because I'm an expert, but I'm just saying it's like what I also want to do. I think like everybody should read in their lifetime Tolkien's essay on fairy stories. This is an old copy of the Tolkien Reader, but you can find it online on fairy stories. It's an essay, and in there he makes a really good defense for how like myth and story should not be understood as just what did C.S. say? As he said, yeah, they're great, but they're lies, breathe silver. And Tolkien said, no, they're not. He said they're incomplete fragments of something greater, mysterious, or truthful.
Nuggets of truth
For sure.
sprinkled throughout.
Absolutely. But he's saying, the questing after understanding of where things came is a good and human birth. And although these stories are incomplete, or we can recognize in them maybe non-scientific kind of aspects of it.
Well, take the modern mythology of ocean, for example.
Yes. Well, and that's my point is that we're always trying to answer things. But it's valid to mention. The thing is this: we have to be careful to think, oh, we're enlightened. We, of course, know almost everything.
Yeah, we are living in the middle of the darkness.
I think
And I think as I was trying
that's
to
a hubris of every civilization.
yeah. So I think we have to recognize that, and reading the stories of previous centuries, they're trying something, and we can be enriched. It can be interesting for us. I mean, why do we enjoy fantasy anyway? And so that's really important to recognize the
Especially
inbuilt
futuristic Orson Scott Card fantasy.
as if life wasn't dystopian enough sometimes.
Well,
Right?
actually, he was kind of asking some questions that he never resolved really in his stories.
Mhm.
Does the government have the right, for the benefit of the human race,
Mhm.
to take children from their homes for the greater?
Right.
Where does the limits of the license from the greater stop?
Right.
Where does it start?
What about the individual? Things like that, rights.
What about things?
What about the Indians? Do they deserve
That's
to live too?
1984. Well, that's Orson. That's sorry. That's
Orson Welles.
that's Orwell, right?
No, it's
What do you
Orson
think?
Scott Card.
The Piggies.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes.
What's it in? Oh! It's in the second movie. It is the second book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go there. That is such a weird book.
And the third book.
I know, but
Which book? Xenos?
they're on it. No, it's when they're on that planet.
I thought he was struggling when he was writing.
Okay, we don't want to get off topic too far here. So anyway, so there's our connection with Finland. I really feel sad that Hawk can't be here because Hawk is like half Finnish, and he'd be able to just share kind of some connections with.
And my
His life.
wife's grandmother is from the Lapland area, which is the Sweden side of the same culture.
Yep.
I think I have some great grandparents from Denmark.
And I didn't realize this that that Estonia actually also
Sure.
people speak Finnish, variant of the same language, right across here.
That's when they're not being absorbed by the Soviet Union.
Right. So anyway, well, guys, if that's good enough for you, shall we jump into these letters and then see what we have to talk about? Jacob, I want to let you have a part in this. Would you feel comfortable reading some of the letters?
Just fine. Maybe.
Okay. All right.
Come on, get out your
I'm
parade
good.
voice. And
So,
Get out your parade voice.
well, here's letter 76, and I'll try to include this on here. Okay,
we can three at a time unless we scooch together.
that's fine. All right, so
That's a short angle lens.
I know. Oh, here's letter 76 from the Letters of Tolkien. This is dated 28th of July, 1944, from a letter to Christopher Tolkien. As to Sam Gamgee, I quite agree with what you say, and I wouldn't dream of altering his name without your approval. But the object of the alteration was precisely to bring up comicness, peasantry, and, if you will, the of the strudel. Had I thought it out at the beginning, I should have given all the hobbits very English names to match the show. The Gaffer first, and Gamgee followed as an echo of the Mormon jokes. I doubt if it's even knew of it only as an through Gamgee tissue, as cotton wool was called, being invented by a man of that name last century. However, I dare say all your imagination of the character is now bound up with the name. So I don't remember what Tolkien thought calling him, but I can call him.
Sam versus Sandwich.
Maybe. Yeah. Plain news is on the aircraft, but the only event worth of talk was the performance of Hamlet, which I had been to just before I wrote last. I don't have the notes on the side. I didn't know why.
I don't either.
Why? Okay, we'll talk about the end. Hamlet, which I'd been to just before I wrote last. I was full of it then, but the cares of the world have soon wiped away the impression. But it emphasized more strongly than anything I've ever seen the folly of reading Shakespeare and editing him in the study, except as a concomitant of seeing his plays acted. It was a very good performance with a young, rather fierce Hamlet. It was played fast without cuts, and came out as a very exciting play. Could one only have seen it without ever having read it or knowing the plot, it would have been terrific. It was well produced except for a bit of bung over the killing of Polonius. But to my surprise, the part that came out as the most moving, most intolerably so, was the one that in reading I always found a bore. The scene of Mad Ophelia singing her snatches, singing songs.
Yeah.
So
Suppose that
we look at
Gamgee is not first. He is not first mentioned in Lord of the Rings. He is mentioned in Mr. West
Yes.
under a different first name.
Really?
Yes.
And is it called Gamgee in there then?
Yes.
That's hilarious. Old Tolkien was just in the stories. And
Yes.
kind of like I think it was with Mr. Blestuda, some creature that lives in a cave or something. Or real random in one of the stories.
Yeah,
probably.
Wasn't there a short story here that was kind of a Pipe of the Shire? I thought.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all of the things are interconnected,
I know nothing.
so you can share that.
Oh, there's only two left.
Did anybody else find it interesting that he was saying, actually, this Shakespeare play would be really, really good if somebody came and watched it not knowing, like not having read it, because Shakespeare isn't very good as a play. If you just read it on stage, it can be really good. I mean, I was a little surprised by
Because it can
that.
transcend the story by what emotion you read from the book itself.
Totally.
But that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But, it's not. If you read it like a novel, it's
it's not a novel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
But
play.
exactly. I'm just saying, if you
Right.
read it as words, it's a lot different.
Which is, but it's strange to hear him say that because I'm thinking of this and kind of, comparing it to. So when somebody takes Tolkien's works and renders it into a script and into a play, as it were, on film instead of on stage,
Yeah.
It's like, wow, he wasn't anti-stage, obviously. Here, he's like, there's more nuance. Like,
Yeah.
he was for stage productions in some ways. He just didn't feel they could ever do Middle Earth well, whereas you could do Shakespeare because, this is like
Well,
a
it's
story.
basically just Earth.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have fantastical elements like wizards.
Right. Anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Yes, Shakespeare seems to have written things that can be done in about any setting. And have
Yes. Well, it was just
including Star Wars.
last meeting. Yeah, Tolkien or Hawk had actually shown us the copy of the Star Wars written in Shakespearean form. It's really good. You can get it at Barnes and Noble.
I don't think we should give Shakespeare too much credit. He was borrowing a lot of his material from plays Latin that nobody could read anymore.
Yeah.
He wasn't coming up with brand new material. He was adapting.
He just told very well as he borrowed.
Well, he played. And he translated it instead of into the language of the nobles, he translated it into the language of the commoners.
But remember that Tolkien himself was trying to create a lore that was British a couple letters back, a couple months back.
Yeah.
And he borrowed from Finland.
He did, and it must be said here that so we're mentioning common language, and then something that's maybe like a Latin, that Finnish also didn't, the Finnish language and Tolkien's reading and learning of it influenced, I think you can directly find roots in the Finnish language that he used when he made Quenya, the High Elven language, whereas Darin is actually influenced Welsh. So it's very interesting that his background knowledge in Finnish, Old Norse,
So
and
he's
Welsh,
respecting
he is.
Finns more than he's respecting
I don't know about that. I think he just felt that the Finnish sounded more high.
the wood elves.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this in Darin, right? That's a little more.
Actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
going back to the comment on Shakespeare, because Shakespeare translated the common language, the common people could learn it instead of a small segment of the population and ability. So it had more traction and it lasted longer than if it was written for stuck-up people who had money.
Right. Yeah. Any thoughts about
Sorry.
No, that's good. Anything about Sam Gamgee?
Doesn't it mean full?
I don't know. Samwise, halfwise. Yeah,
That
it
means
might
full,
be.
doesn't it?
Well, he calls him this jewel among the hobbits, and I think we all agree that Lord of the Rings without Sam, it just wouldn't work. I mean, Frodo wouldn't work anyway.
He brought Frodo back down to Earth when he would
Right.
get up in the stratosphere.
Oh yeah. Well, and the ring would have definitely been captured without Sam. I think my most favorite section about Sam is after Shelob has stung Frodo, and then Sam defends him and drives Shelob away, and then of course he's like, "What do I do? My master's dead," he thinks, and he takes the ring, and that whole thing where he realizes the orcs come and take Frodo away, and he thinks he's not dead. And the end of the very end, they think about this when the Two Towers was first published. The third book hadn't been put out yet, and the last words of the Two Towers are, "Frodo was alive, but who can let it in?" And then you're thinking, what is going to happen?
There's actually that brings up a side note on the difference between the trilogy that Steve Jackson did first, that comes later, the difference between that and the books. In the books, Samwise is classified another ring ring wearer, an entity that has to go to the Undying Land.
Right.
So, in his write-up,
right.
he talked about how there's one boat waiting in the heavens solely for Sam. You know, and and Peter Jackson missed that a little bit.
Well, they just didn't have. I suppose one could say that's the next story. Is they finish the Return of the King with Sam after leaving Farewell to Great Havens, goes back and goes back, and that's what he did do.
Yeah.
But years later, after Rosie dies, he goes and he.
Yeah, when most people would pass away, he goes off to the Undying
He does.
Land. He's a ring bearer, part of the old age.
He was given that privilege, and it's a very rare thing. So, okay,
Where
well,
did this talk about that?
As a kind of, another side note, in the Peoples of Middle Earth, we talk about how the legless bread is made from plants that came from the Undying Land. So they didn't hand those out just to anybody because it was addictive.
Really?
Yeah. So we're supposed to continue on. What's next?
Okay. Neglecting
I left
other
the table, man.
duties. I think this means duties.
it is. Sorry, someone has transcribed it.
31st July 1944. So this is Japan surrender?
No.
No.
They surrendered after VE Day, so you got June or no May of 1945 is when Germany surrenders.
Yeah.
It was August when Japan surrendered.
Oh, okay. So this
Yes,
is
this is
still
before that.
Yeah.
This is on the height of the war.
Yeah, it was soon after D-Day. Sorry,
Yeah.
D-Day happened, but they were still
Neglecting
trying.
other duties.
Probably before Operation Market.
I've put in a good many hours typing because the typewriters are all just war. And am now nearly at the end of the new stuff in the ring. So soon go on and finish. And I hope shortly to send you another batch.
We keep those in the
Benny was here on Saturday to tea in a very pleasant mood, and it cheered he up as she too was very lonely with only a couple old grousers and nothing to do but read. She had just read Out of the Silent Planet and Herlanderas, which we shall have to deal with next time, and with good taste preferred the latter. But she finds it hard to realize that Vincent is not meant to be a portrait of me, though as a philologist, I may have some part in him and recognize some of my opinions and ideas Lewisified in him. The news good today. Things may move fast now, if not quite so fast as some think. I wonder how long Von Papen will manage to keep above ground. And when the burst comes in fights, then will be the time to get excited. How long? And what of the red chrysanthemum in the east? And when it is all over, will ordinary people have any freedom left or right? And will they have to fight? Or will they be too tired to resist?
I think she should speak up for the microphone.
The last rather seems the idea some of the big folk who, for the most part, viewed this war from the vantage point of large motor cars. Too many are childless, but I suppose the one certain result is that of it all is a further growth in the idea. No, a further growth in the great standardized amalgamations of their mass-produced notions of and emotions. Music will give place to diving, which, as far as I can make out, means holding a jam session around a piano, an instrument properly intended to produce sounds devised by, say, Chopin, and hitting it so hard that it breaks. Piano, by the way, means quiet. This delicately cultured amusement is said to be a fever in the USA. Oh God, oh Montreal, oh Minnesota, oh Michigan. What kind of mass mania the Soviets can produce remains for peace and prosperity and the removal of war hypnotism show. Not quite so dismal as the Western ones, perhaps, I hope. But one doesn't altogether wonder a few smaller states waiting in neutral. They are between a devil and a deep sea, all right. And you can stick which D you like on which side you like.
Yeah, which capital B?
Stick to the devil you know. However, it's always been going on in different terms. And you and I belong to the ever defeated, ever altogether subdued side.
Oh, the long defeat.
Yes. I should have hated the Roman Empire in its day, as I do, and remained a patriotic Roman citizen, while preferring a free Gaul and seeing good in Carthaginians. Delenda es Carthage, which
I don't know. We'll have to check it out.
We hear a rather lot of that nowadays. I was actually taught at school that it was a fine saying, and I reacted, as they say, in this case, with less than the usual misapplication at once. There lies still some hope that, at least in our beloved land of England, propaganda defeats itself and even produces the opposite effect. It is said that it is even so in Russia, and I bet is so in Germany. 1st August, next day, I hear there is just coming out first whispers of The Wind in the Willows, which we will also have to review, and the reviews seem favorable. It is published by Kenneth Graham's widow, but it is not, I gather, notes from the book, stories about toad and mole, etc. He wrote letters to his son. I might hold copy if possible. I'm afraid I may have a great mistake in making my sequel too long and complicated and too slow in coming out. It is a curse having this epic temperament in an overcrowded age devoted to snappy bits.
Thank you, Chris.
Devoted to snappy bits.
He's
calling
very
Toad and Frog.
well,
snappy
he's kind
bits.
of talking about the rise of the soundbite as the prominent thing in culture. We like to reduce everything to a soundbite. Are we still recording?
Yeah, we are still recording. I'm just going to try to see if I can log on to or get into the OneRing.net and see if anybody there has any comments. So, guys, carry please with your discussion, and I'm hoping we'll be able to at least respond to any questions that people might comments
My machine
if
was
you're listening.
connecting to the internet. Probably would be okay for that.
You can do that if you want to, if you have used the OneRing.net before.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
A good, patriotic Roman citizen. But I think his comment about reacting in 1944 was very true about the 1950s and early 1960s, in that, on the whole, America was very tired of war. Japan was very tired of war. Germany was tired of war, and probably the most tired and the most anti-war was the Brits. They were done. They completely dismantled everything, and this was the last death knell of the Royal British Empire that had expanded the economic ability of the UK to influence the world. This was the last dying breath, and they said, we've had enough.
Well, wasn't there also an echo of the World War I attitude? This was the war to end all wars.
Right.
Which, it's that kind of strikes me as misguided as an attitude.
it is certainly misguided, as we see today. But certainly, anyone who goes through what these guys were going through definitely found war tiresome. Not the people in the front, but the people at home who had to deal with food rations and ration and such things.
As an example, it really didn't affect my mother all that much. She was
On the farm?
no, I don't know specifics of where she lived, but she was like 8 years old during World War II. And I recently asked her about it, and she said it really didn't affect her all that much. She wasn't really conscious of it. My dad served in the Army Air Corps. He wasn't on the front lines. He was a clerk on one.
My dad was born in 1943. He was a war baby.
Yeah, well, like I said, I have more in common with an elf sometimes than a regular human.
Okay, I'm just checking on here. And just to see if we might have some comments. Right, okay, actually I'm going to have to look on here. Carry on, guys. I guess I need one more. Looks like on merp.com is where we have some people who get online. So,
I wanted to go back with
Yeah,
to
go
back
ahead,
to the
please.
discussion of where Stan Genji and its importance in the story and the way that he carries it along and is important. One part in the book and the movie that got me was the description of the fortress that Frodo was taken to and held. And I don't know the name of it.
Minas Morgul? No, it wasn't Minas Morgul. It was that tower. Yeah.
The whole area, and the way that there was the secret door and all the stuff. And in the movie, it was just like he just walked in there, and it was a lot of dialogue.
Like the whole part where he pretends that he's like they all think that's some big elven warrior, right?
Yeah.
And he can plays with that.
He does, but in the movie, they just a shadow of him, being worked up. But in the book, it's just the myth that there might be someone infiltrating. That it could be, like they never had a rumor. Exactly, it's more of a rumor. They used a shadow. It was more of a rumor. And the way they described the gargoyles that were like
The Watchers?
The Watchers, yes. They didn't have those at all in the movie.
Did they not? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure they didn't have the gate that he ran through.
I guess in my mind I had the gargoyles, instead of being a quasi-living entity, more of the automated machine magic.
Well, they had the glowing eyes, and yeah. I just picture them as being somewhat of a significant. They were a part of the story.
Admittedly, it's been a long time since I've
Yeah.
read the story, and so a lot of it's faded from memory. But they didn't seem to actually do anything except sound alarms.
Yeah, but
Which, it's an automated system.
But it was something that Sam noticed and that he's concerned about coming and going, and it was a big part of the discussion as far as like when he was doing protocol.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point actually, and it's just like little pets or something.
No, they were
Some serious
power gargoyles.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to think of them as almost like a golem in the sense that they just they're watchers. They had some significance, and it was something that maybe it wouldn't carry on.
That actually goes back to the nature of Sauron, the nature of the elves, the magic systems that they're using. The elves' magic system is based on arts.
Yeah, it's solid.
The magic system that Sauron was using was under control.
Or you could eat humans.
No,
Well,
control.
I was thinking of Saruman.
He
Sorry.
was trying. Sauron trying to control his populations.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to use another thing. I'd like to use the word dominate. It's more fitting in the sense it really
I
wasn't.
guess control in the sense that the conspiracies go with. Manipulation of the population.
So yeah, I mean that's a pretty big touch there.
Viewed war from the
Speak up louder, Chris. What is it?
viewed this war from the vantage of large motor cars which Mr. Blake owned. Sorry.
So what do you think that's all about? From viewed from motor
It's
cars?
his perception of the political hierarchy, like Winston Churchill, Parliament.
Okay, because I didn't know how to take that. I thought maybe it was like.
That's at a guess.
Too many are child.
I like that statement in the sense living through an era of war, which I'm young, and I'm living through this era, if you want to call it much of a war.
These are
do,
wars. These
whatever.
are police actions.
Whatever. All it, to me at least, it's more than just it's just politics, and it's so I don't know. It's just ridiculous, and I just wonder how people felt that were as you read these letters that are written from a war hero, and well, maybe not a war hero, but a person who participated in World War I and was going through an era of another world war.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see his take, and it's hard for me personally to maybe rationalize or maybe not think alike to the way that it's hard to relate to something like this in the sense of like, sure, my aunt and uncle they were alive, young but alive, and I don't know. Maybe I lost my point, but
Well, Tolkien served in the trenches as a lieutenant.
yeah.
That means he was part of the officer corps instead of the rank and file. It was his job to tell people to go to meetings. So, to a certain extent, he's part of the old aristocracy in a certain aspect, and not part of the common soldiery.
Well,
I'm kind of rambling there.
yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think that also has to do with what his role was before he went to war. Because I mean, he was a professor, wasn't he, before he went to war?
Well, yeah, that was his profession.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Is being a professor and being in the Ivy League, schoolish, and that hierarchy is a lot. When you take him and you move him to military, you wouldn't expect him to be in the same kind of a role as the common man. But he's still reflecting in World War II as these people in these big cars, looking at
Oh, the reason why I was mentioning the lieutenant is because the lieutenant is the bottom rung.
Yeah.
So, he's not at the bottom rank, which is told to go to the top in the line with the machine guns.
Yeah.
But he's kind of got a decent sympathy.
Do we have any comments or anything?
I was on this is a Hall of Fire, and I'm supposed to be on the main chat. Obviously, this is where when one of us is usually the person who's linked in, it gets hard because I thought I was clicking onto their main chat. So I don't think there's anything there, and yeah,
I
a
find
little
this
bit.
long discussion later when we go up.
Absolutely, yeah, that's okay. No, I think you guys have been. I think that's been awfully helpful. So much everybody's comments. I was just looking on Merp.com because I know that Artemir is actually from Finland, or lives in Finland. I'm not sure, but he. Yeah, so obviously part of it's the.
Your job is not
I know.
working properly.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's always saying it needs to be updated
I blame it.
forever.
I blame it being an Acer.
You know, could be.
Sorry, I don't know.
No worries. I was telling you to run this time.
Well, yeah, run this time, but
Can I not do? Let's do that. Yeah, see if there's anybody on the Merc.com online chat room. You know, if I had planned better, I would have had this on. Yeah. So you know that Hawk did post on there that we were going to be here today. So maybe we could just kind of do a roundup, see if there's any questions or comments there, and then can maybe kind of finish up here. I know I'm going to have to leave pretty soon. So.
j.r.r. Click for details.
Great. So I guess I do have to update Java here. So, all right, guys. So the next meeting will. Do you?
Actually, I noticed that the pattern of next month is the same as it was this month. So instead of changing it at the last minute to put it back 1 week, why don't we just say we're going to do it the third week next month?
It doesn't matter to me. Does a certain time work well for either of you? As far as which Saturday of the month? Or second and third?
I just noticed that when the dates fall like they had for these last 2 months, Hawk usually ends up pushing it back a week anyways.
Well, we all have time constraints, and we it's great when
I
everybody.
wasn't meaning that as a criticism. It's just saying that was
So,
observed behavior.
So I know, whatever works best for everybody, but we recognize not everybody can be here every time. But yeah, I'm open to that, to doing the third one. So anyway, well, I apologize for any online viewers for my ineptitude in not being able to check the online comments. So again, I hope that this has been useful to you, and hopefully we've been able to keep our going, and that way at least people can refer back to it later too if they have any questions. So, any last comments from any of us here? Richard?
No.
Okay. Chris? Jacob?
No.
All right. Well, on behalf of the Tolkien Society, situated in real time and real space in Spokane, Washington, USA, and also online on the internet, we want to wish you all well, and we'll see you next month. Please stay tuned to tolkienscholars.net, and we'll update you as to when our next meeting is, which will be in March. We meet once a month and talk about all things related to Tolkien's works and anything else that happens to cross as a rabbit trail. It's all good. So thanks for joining us if you've been listening, and we've enjoyed each other's company. So be well. Maria.
Mare.